My name is Margaret Ellis. I was 46 years old, living just outside Nashville, Tennessee, when my husband looked me dead in the eyes during our divorce hearing and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "She'll leave this courtroom with nothing. I made every dollar we ever had." A few people actually smiled. His new girlfriend crossed her legs, leaned back in the gallery, and whispered, "She's about to find out what happens when you bite the hand that fed you." I didn't answer. I didn't even look at them. Instead, I reached into my purse, pulled out a plain blue folder, and quietly placed it on my attorney's desk. He looked at it, then at me. "You sure?" I nodded once. "I've been sure for 10 years. What happened after that wasn't something anyone in that courtroom, including my husband, ever saw coming. But to understand why that folder mattered, you have to understand our marriage. Funny thing is, when I met Daniel, he didn't even own a decent pair of shoes. We were both 26. He worked construction during the day and delivered pizzas at night. I worked as a payroll clerk for a manufacturing company. Neither of us had much. We rented a tiny duplex where the pipes rattled every winter. The couch came from Goodwill. The kitchen table belonged to my grandmother. We were happy anyway. Or at least, I thought we were. Daniel had one dream. He wanted to open his own construction company. Everybody laughed. Too risky, too expensive, too competitive. I never laughed. Every paycheck I received, I tucked something away. $20, $50, sometimes $200 if overtime had been good. I called it our freedom fund. Daniel used to kiss my forehead and say, "One day you'll never have to work another day of your life." Lord knows I believed him. 5 years later, Ellis Custom Homes officially opened. The first truck, bought with money from my savings account. The office, our garage. The bookkeeping, me. Invoices, me. Payroll, me. Taxes, me. Insurance paperwork, me. Every evening after my full-time job, I'd spend another 4 or 5 hours helping Daniel. Weekends weren't weekends anymore. They were estimates, permits, contracts, customer calls, late-night spreadsheets. I'd fall asleep sitting at the dining room table with a calculator still in my hand. Daniel always said the same thing. "This isn't my company, it's ours." When our daughter Emma was born, things became even harder. Daycare cost a fortune, so I switched to working from home. I'd answer business phones while rocking Emma's crib with my foot. I'd type invoices one-handed while feeding her a bottle. Sometimes customers would hear a baby crying in the background. I'd apologize. Most of them laughed. "Sounds like a family business." It was. Or so I thought. The company slowly grew. One crew became 2, 2 trucks became 6. Eventually, we were building custom homes all across Middle Tennessee. Money started coming in. Real money. Daniel bought a brand new pickup, then another. We moved into a beautiful house overlooking a lake. Friends started calling him successful. Local magazines interviewed him. He became self-made. That phrase always bothered me, self-made, like nobody had been standing beside him for 15 years. You know what changed first, not the money. His attitude. He stopped asking how my day had been, stopped thanking me, stopped introducing me as my partner. Now I'd hear, "This is my wife." Nothing more. One evening during a charity dinner, someone congratulated Daniel. "You built an incredible company." He smiled. "I did all right." I waited. Surely he'd mention me. He didn't. The conversation moved on. I smiled through dinner, went home, sat in the garage for almost an hour before walking inside. Not because I wanted credit, because it suddenly hit me I had disappeared from my own story. Emma noticed before I did. She was 16. One Saturday she asked, "Mom, why does Dad always call it his business?" I looked up from the laptop. "What do you mean?"
He tells everyone he built it himself. She hesitated. But weren't you there too? I forced a smile. I was. She frowned. Then why doesn't he say that? I didn't have an answer. A year later, Daniel hired a new marketing director. Her name was Vanessa. She was polished, confident, always dressed like she'd stepped out of a magazine. At first, I genuinely liked her. She seemed smart, professional. Then little things started happening. Daniel stayed later at the office. Business trips doubled. Weekend meetings suddenly became necessary. Whenever I asked, same answer. It's work. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I didn't go looking, because after 22 years of marriage, you either trust someone or you don't. One rainy Tuesday, I stopped by the office with lunch. His truck was outside. Vanessa's car, too. The receptionist looked surprised. "Oh, I thought y'all were out." "What do you mean?" "They left about an hour ago." I smiled politely, carried the food back to my car, sat there. The fries got cold. So did my coffee. I drove home without calling. Something inside me already knew. I never hired a private investigator, never checked his phone, never followed him. I didn't need proof. Not yet. Because the man I married had already been leaving long before another woman showed up. The divorce papers arrived 6 months later. FedEx, signature required. Emma happened to answer the door. She carried the envelope into the kitchen. "Dad's lawyer?" I nodded. She stared at me. "Is this really happening?" I couldn't answer, because until that exact moment, some small part of me still believed he'd walk through the door and say, "I've made the biggest mistake of my life." He never did. The next few weeks were ugly. Not screaming, not fighting. Something worse. Silence. Daniel moved into a downtown condo. Vanessa appeared in public beside him almost immediately. People talked. Some took sides. Others stayed quiet. I focused on Emma. College applications, senior year, keeping life as normal as possible. Then my attorney called. His voice sounded unusually careful. "Margaret, I need you to come in." His office overlooked downtown Nashville. He waited until I sat down, then slid a stack of documents across the desk. These came during discovery. I started reading. My stomach tightened. Corporate ownership, investment accounts, property deeds. One thing jumped out immediately. My name was missing. I looked up. "What is this?" He sighed. "Daniel transferred almost everything over the last 3 years." "What?" "He claims you were never involved in the business." I laughed, not because it was funny, because it sounded insane. "He can't possibly prove that." My attorney looked at me. "He thinks he can." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he asked, "Margaret, do you have anything?" "What do you mean?" "Anything that proves your involvement." I almost smiled. "Anything?" I thought about the filing cabinet in my home office. 22 years of receipts, payroll, emails, tax filings, loan documents, insurance renewals, meeting notes, every invoice I'd ever entered, every payroll report I'd ever printed, every handwritten notebook I'd kept since the company started in our garage. I looked at him. "How much evidence do you want?" He leaned forward. "Everything." That night, Emma found me in the basement, surrounded by banker boxes. Dust floated through the air. Folders covered the floor. She picked one up and said, "Mom, you kept all this?" I nodded. "I never throw business records away." She opened one. "Dad's handwriting." Another. "My first daycare receipt." Another. "The loan papers for the first truck." She looked at me. "Did Dad know you saved everything?" I slowly closed another file. "No." She swallowed. "Maybe he should have." I looked at the mountain of boxes surrounding us. For the first time since the divorce papers arrived, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not anger, not revenge. Certainty. Because buried somewhere inside those boxes was the truth. And 3 weeks later, when my husband walked into court laughing, he had absolutely no idea what was waiting inside a simple blue folder.
The morning of the final hearing, I parked across the street from the courthouse and sat there with the engine off. My coffee had gone cold. My hands rested on the steering wheel while I watched people hurry inside carrying briefcases and legal files. Funny thing is, I wasn't scared anymore. I was tired. Tired of pretending 22 years of sacrifice had never happened. When I finally walked into the courtroom, Daniel was already there. Expensive suit, brand new watch, the same confident grin he'd worn since filing for divorce. Vanessa sat behind him, smiling like she was waiting for a celebration instead of a court hearing. The moment he saw me, he leaned over. "You still have time to settle." I looked at him calmly. "I already did." He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm done negotiating with someone who's rewritten our entire life." Before he could answer, the bailiff announced the judge. Everyone stood. The hearing began with Daniel's attorney. He spoke smoothly, confidently. "Your Honor, Mr. Ellis built Ellis Custom Homes through his own determination, leadership, and personal investment." He paused dramatically. "Mrs. Ellis supported the household like many spouses do, but she played no meaningful role in creating the company." Vanessa smiled. Daniel nodded. I didn't react. My attorney simply stood, picked up the blue folder, and handed it to the judge. "Your Honor, we'd like the court to review this timeline before testimony continues." The judge adjusted his glasses. "What's inside?" "A complete business history. Documented." The courtroom became unusually quiet. The judge opened the folder. Page 1, then page 2, then another. Every page carried dates, receipts, payroll records, emails, loan agreements, bank statements. No emotional language, just facts. March 2003. Margaret Ellis transferred $42,000 from her personal savings to purchase the company's first work truck. Supporting documents attached. August 2004. Margaret Ellis personally guaranteed the company's line of credit after the original bank declined Daniel Ellis as the sole borrower. Supporting bank records attached. January 2005. Margaret Ellis processed payroll while maintaining full-time outside employment. Employee signatures attached. The judge kept reading. The room stayed silent. Then he reached the emails. One made him stop. He read it twice. "Mr. Ellis, did you write this?" Daniel leaned forward. "What email?" The judge read aloud. "I couldn't keep this company alive without you. One day everyone will know this business belongs to both of us." The courtroom was silent. Daniel shifted in his chair. "I don't remember." The judge simply turned another page. Another email. "Thank you for working nights so I can keep chasing this dream." Another. "You built this company right beside me." The judge looked over his glasses. "Did you write these?" Daniel swallowed loudly. "Yes." His attorney suddenly looked far less confident. The judge continued reviewing financial records. Then something caught his attention. He compared 2 bank statements, then another. Finally, he looked directly at Daniel. "You testified that your company became financially independent during its second year, correct?" The judge lifted a document.
Then why did your operating account receive 3 separate personal deposits from Mrs. Ellis, totaling nearly $80,000 over the following 4 years? Daniel froze. His attorney whispered something. No answer came. The judge wasn't finished. He opened another section: corporate meeting notes, payroll logs, insurance renewals, state contractor filings. Every single document listed one additional person: Margaret Ellis, bookkeeper, financial officer, corporate secretary, authorized signatory. The judge slowly closed the folder. Interesting. He looked toward Daniel. Mr. Ellis, you repeatedly described yourself as the sole architect of this company. He tapped the documents. The records suggest something very different. A short recess was called. Outside the courtroom, nobody spoke. Vanessa walked over to Daniel. He barely looked at her. For the first time since this divorce began, he looked worried. Emma arrived during the break. She sat beside me quietly. "Are you okay?" I smiled. "I think today we're finally telling the truth." She squeezed my hand. "You already have." When court resumed, the forensic accountant hired by the court testified. He had spent 3 weeks reviewing every financial record. His testimony lasted less than 20 minutes. Mrs. Ellis's financial contributions directly funded the company's early operations. Without those contributions, he adjusted his glasses, the company likely would not have remained solvent. Daniel stared straight ahead. The accountant continued. Additionally, the corporate records indicate Mrs. Ellis performed substantial administrative and financial duties without separate compensation. The judge nodded slowly. "Thank you." Daniel's attorney attempted one final argument. "Your Honor, emotional support should not automatically create ownership." The judge smiled politely. "This case isn't about emotional support." He lifted the blue folder. "It's about documented financial participation." Big difference. Then came something nobody expected. The judge asked Daniel one final question. "Mr. Ellis, if your wife had never invested her savings, never guaranteed your loans, never handled payroll, never managed your finances, would this company exist today?" Daniel sat perfectly still. Nearly 30 seconds passed. Finally, he lowered his head. "I don't know." The judge answered for him. "I believe these records do." The ruling came that afternoon. The court recognized my ownership interest in the company. Our marital assets would be divided fairly based on documented contributions, not assumptions, not ego. Facts. Daniel lost much more than money that day. He lost the story he'd spent years telling himself. As people began leaving, Vanessa disappeared without saying goodbye. Daniel remained seated. After everyone else left, he walked toward me. "I forgot." "What?" He looked exhausted. "Everything you did." I shook my head. "No. You didn't forget. You just stopped wanting to remember." He closed his eyes. Maybe I was right. 6 months later, I wasn't sitting in another courtroom. I was standing inside my own office, not part of Ellis Custom Homes, something entirely different. I had started a financial consulting business, helping small family-owned companies avoid the very mistakes that destroyed my own marriage. Turns out, people trusted someone who understood both business and sacrifice. The company grew faster than I expected. Emma joined after graduation. Working beside my daughter felt very different than working beside someone who had slowly erased me. She thanked me every single day. Almost a year after the divorce, Daniel called, not about money, not about court. He simply asked, "Can I buy you coffee?" I agreed. We met at the little diner where we'd celebrated landing our very first customer 22 years earlier. He looked older, quieter. "I've been thinking. I know. I spent years believing success belonged to whoever's name was on the building." He smiled sadly. I was wrong. I nodded. Success belongs to everyone who carried the weight. We talked for nearly an hour, not about getting back together. That chapter had ended. But about Emma, about life, about learning too late that gratitude has an expiration date if you never speak it aloud. Today, people sometimes ask whether winning in court felt satisfying. Honestly, the courtroom wasn't where I won. I won the night I opened those dusty banker boxes in my basement, because inside those files, I found proof of something I'd almost forgotten.
My value had never depended on whether someone else acknowledged it. The paperwork didn't create my worth. The judge didn't create it. The divorce settlement didn't create it. They simply revealed a truth that had been there all along. And if there's one lesson I hope someone watching this story takes away, it's this: never let anyone rewrite the history of your sacrifices. The people who truly value you won't need a courtroom to recognize what you've done. And the ones who don't, eventually the truth catches up with them anyway.